Hello, YouTuber woobers. So, we're going to try doing a panoramic JPEG on Adobe Premiere. And, I'm going to set up my screen record. I guess this started. Okay, so what you want to do is to go into your photo editor and create your panoramic. In Photoshop, what you would do is you would load up all the pictures in your panoramic view, and then you would go down to automate and photo merge. And if you have all your pictures loaded in here for the that you took for the panoramic pictures, you would add them here and they would list out. You take out any ones that were not in part of the picture shoot. And then you have some options here. You can do a content aware, which is going to fix things that are missing, and correction for vignette and geographic distortion, depending on which options you pick. Now, in the old days, which was a few years ago, auto would take care of everything. But now you kind of have to go through the different settings to find out what works for you. I've been using collage lately, and that takes out these two fixes. But then once you do it, you hit the OK button, and it will generate a panoramic picture. Most likely. If it doesn't, then you try one of the other settings. You know, if your pictures don't line up properly, they're from the way that it detects them, you might have to do some playing around. So then you end up with a picture like this, which this is my backyard. I've taken a number of them, different parts of the year. Now, typically for me, when I go in and edit pictures for my music videos of photos of different places that I travel, I will go in and if after doing cropping and touch up and stuff, I will go into image size, and I will change the height and the width to 1920 by 1080, which is the image size for 1080p. A regular photograph these days is 6,000 by 4,000, so you have to crop off something off the top and the bottom to get that thing, because it's not, the cameras don't line up with the camcorders, but it's very doable. Or you end up with black edges on the side because you want everything from top to bottom. You play around. There's different things you can do. Excuse me, but doing the panoramic, if you chose 1080 here, you're going to end up with an amount, maybe somewhere around 5,000 or so. But it doesn't seem to work the same in Premiere Pro. So what you want to do is create a far bigger picture. Like say if it was a 4K video picture. Now this 4,000 for the height is not unusual. That's kind of what the camera puts out. So, and you're going to have a bunch of them stitched together. Now at this point, it'd be useful because your first picture that goes on the timeline is going to be is going to set up your sequence numbers for the video. So you're going to want to take note of this. It's going to be 4,000. It's a good thing they even write it down. You know, that old thing called a pen and paper. So 4,000 in height and 29785. Okay. So now here is another picture that I did last winter. You can see it spans out. In fact, even when I put this video up online, it's not going to show it the same way, because the screen size online is going to be 21 was it 1920 in the width, and my screen size is on the here is far larger. So you go into image size, and now you're going to want this bottom number, 4,000. $29,785. Now this works for me because I've already made the picture proportionate before. So going to this is going to work for you, but you're going to want to make sure that, you know, all your pictures in the timeline are all the same size. So now I'm going to export this, because right now it's a Photoshop file, and you got to export it out to being a JPEG. Now I'm not sure why it's doing this. It won't actually let me push it to 100%, which is what I wanted. If I click on this, image dimensions cannot be scaled exactly as entered and have been rounded. For the exact size, please use canvas size or scale the layers. Snowy background. So now we want to go to Premiere and we want to bring over the snowy background and drop it down onto the timeline. So this one here is 5 seconds long, but I really would like it to be longer. But right now we're going to settle for the 5 seconds. So now what we want to do is move this over, and you can use the arrow button to get a little bit of bite into it. So this is the dimension of it, and it's farther out. So what we want to do to give it some dimension is to zoom in and then we're going to keep moving our side so we can get to where our start is. I'm going to zoom in on the backhoe. It's my neighbor's backhoe that has some technical problems, and it's an antique, so it's hard to find someone to work on it. So how does that look? About right. All right, so now we want to hit the stopwatches, and the stopwatches will give you start up your keyframes. See, there's no keyframe options right here, but when you press this and this, your keyframe options pop up. And you have 2 keyframes starting on the timeline for the picture. This one and this one. So now you can go all along the timeline and zoom in and zoom out as you go to give yourself some animation. But what we're going to do for here, and I'm pretty content with, but you can do is if you've got a skyline of like some buildings stuff, you can zoom into the buildings and then zoom back out again, which would be far more interesting than my backyard. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to 100%. And then we're going to move this image back down to there we go. Now there's the end of the picture. So I got that. And there. Not much to look at with the snow. So I would estimate right here that this is about 3 feet of snow in the backyard. All this is shrubbery. And that's the apple tree. So now if we want to play through, like we'll start from the very beginning. There you go. So it's a fairly simple way to do it. This one was, I just took this picture recently, last week I believe. And then it was the fall. This is a summer one that I would have taken last summer. Back to the same thing. We want to set this to 4,000, which is changing to 29,785. Then we want to export it. Is this just a great? And then change this to 29,785. $4,000. Well, that's just dandy. My internet's a little slow this morning, and since this is supposed to work independently of the internet, but it is a gray area. So, image size is correct. We want to export. I guess we should just let it export. Summer backyard. Replace it. Okay. Back onto the timeline. Timeline over here. When you want to get down, you want to use your arrow keys. And you want to zoom in. Oh. Snowy. Alright. And because you want to highlight it to get, you want to put your indicator, timeline indicator, and the, you want to highlight the video or photo you're working on. If you highlight this one and you have your marker over here, you're actually still working on that. So if you make any adjustments, it's going to affect that. I kind of do that a lot. I forget to highlight what I'm working on. And then I change my settings by accident. Because I'm old and forgetful. So we're going to zoom in. Now if I was paid attention, I would have remembered my zoom in, but random is okay. Zoom in on that tractor. Maybe we'll zoom in a little more, just for the fun of it. There's the edge of the frame. Maybe just a little more. Now, the higher resolution of your pictures will give you some options to play with, and that's the kind of the advantage of leaving them at full resolution in Photoshop instead of stripping down the image and cropping it and making it smaller. If you're dealing with the full version, like if you have a 4K camera, which I don't yet, but you know, when I get enough donations to my YouTube channel, maybe I can afford a 4K camera, but right now it's well out of my spending range. So we zoom in, we got its positioned where we want it. Where we want it. What's more interesting? The oil tank. Is the oil tank interesting? Alright, then we hit the stopwatches. That starts up our first two keyframes. Move this down to here. And then bring it back. Kind of where you need some room with your mouse. You can enter the numbers in if you know what the numbers are. Now maybe you don't want to change the zoom, but what fun is that? comes over. Move it down. And there you go. It already has its 2 keyframes in place. So if you want to scan through just this picture, see how it looks. There you go. Now, just if you wanted to try to zoom in halfway, to this apple tree, for example, you could kind of mess things up a little bit. Just for the heck of it, we'll try this, see what happens with this. So we got the apple tree, and we're going to zoom in on this apple tree, which really you can't see any apples during the summertime so much. You can see them in the winter, or the crab apples. We're just going to see what this does. As you can see some. Now we want to see what this does. Might screw everything up. And it takes out a lot of the fun of it all. So I think I'm going to delete these 2 keyframes. And stick with what I had. And there you go. That's a quickie video on how to put some motion into your pictures. You could do this with any pictures, but I was doing it with these here. You can some videos, some editors will automatically put in a zoom and a pan into your photos for you. And take out the mechanics. There are plugins you can get for Premiere Pro that you can put on here and it'll take care of that zoom and panning for you. But it's always good to know the mechanics behind a shortcut. There you go, 28 minutes. Ta-ta.